From the sky above Jakarta, the landscape looks strangely uneven. Rolling hills streaked with color, shimmering under the tropical sun. But these are not mountains of earth. They are mountains of garbage. Bantar Gebang, the largest landfill in Southeast Asia, towers like a man-made volcano, a living monument to the waste of a nation and of the world. Every day, thousands of trucks crawl up its slopes, dumping more than 7,000 tons of trash. Smoke rises, birds circle, and people move through the piles, searching for plastic, metal, and anything, of value. Indonesia, a country of stunning beauty, has become the dumping ground of the planet's modern life. And behind the skyline of Jakarta, a darker truth grows higher every day. The story of how human progress, when left unchecked, then can turn paradise into a mountain of decay. Indonesia, the global waste hotspot. Indonesia has become one of the world's largest dumping grounds, not only for its own garbage, but for the waste of other nations. With more than 270 million people, the country produces around 175,000 tons of trash every day, yet less than 10% is ever recycled. The rest ends up in open landfills, rivers, and coastal waters. After China banned waste imports in 2018, global shipping routes shifted. Containers filled with recyclable materials from the United States, Australia, and Europe began arriving at Indonesian ports. Inside were piles of mixed plastic, household trash, and industrial debris. Small towns in East Java and Sumatra became accidental waste hubs. Residents burned imported plastic to cook food or dry fish, releasing toxic fumes into the air. Soil and water tests revealed traces of lead, mercury, and microplastics. Local governments, overwhelmed by the volume, could only move the garbage from one place to another, creating new dumps faster than they could manage old ones. At the same time, Indonesia's own consumption boom has made matters worse. A growing middle class and the explosion of online shopping have led to mountains of single-use packaging. From Jakarta's rivers to Bali's beaches, plastic bags and bottles have become part of the landscape. Each year, an estimated 3 million tons of waste from Indonesia flow into the ocean, threatening marine life and food chains across the Pacific. In a world built on convenience, Indonesia has become the final stop for what others throw away. The crisis is no longer just about pollution. It's about the fragile balance between progress and survival and the global system that treats one nation's trash as another's burden. Bantar Gebang, the giant of garbage. Just 20 kilometers east of Jakarta stands a mountain unlike any other on Earth. Bantar Gebang, Southeast Asia's largest landfill, a sprawling landscape of waste that never stops growing. Spread across more than 100 hectares, it receives over 7,000 tons of garbage every single day, carried in by convoys of trucks that never seem to end. From a distance, it looks like a giant hillside blanketed in gray and brown, but up close, it's alive, shifting, steaming, and breathing methane. The air is thick with the smell of decay and smoke, and the buzzing of flies fills the sky. At dawn, scavengers known locally as pemulung climb the mounds with long hooks, searching for plastic bottles, scrap metal, or anything they can sell. For thousands of families, this is both their workplace and home. Makeshift huts line the edges of the landfill, built from the very materials pulled from the trash. Children play among the heaps while their parents sort and bag recyclables under the burning sun. Fires break out regularly, triggered by trapped gas or spontaneous combustion, turning the air into a haze of toxic fumes. In the rainy season, parts of the landfill collapse like avalanches, burying workers in homes below. Local hospitals report rising cases of respiratory disease, skin infections, and even poisoning from contaminated groundwater. Yet every morning the cycle begins again. Trucks unload, people dig, smoke rises. Bantar Gebang is not just a landfill. It's a living monument to modern consumption, a symbol of how a nation's progress and its pollution have fused into one towering mass of consequence. Life among the waste pickers. At the foot of Indonesia's garbage mountains, life continues in ways both heartbreaking and extraordinary. Thousands of people, known locally as pemulung, live and work inside Bantar Gebang and other massive landfills across the country. Entire families depend on trash for survival, waking before sunrise to sift through fresh piles of waste dumped by city trucks. With long metal hooks and torn gloves, they pick out bottles, cans, and bits of plastic that can be sold for a few cents a kilo. On a good day, a worker might earn the equivalent of $2 or $3, barely enough to buy rice and water. Their homes are patched together from old tarpaulins, plywood, and whatever can be salvaged. Electricity is stolen from nearby lines, and the smell of burning trash never fades. Children play barefoot among broken glass and needles, while older ones help their parents sort recyclables instead of going to school. During heavy rains, rivers of garbage flow through their neighborhoods, carrying disease and filth. Yet, despite the danger, most Pamulang choose to stay. For them, the landfill is not just work, it is identity, community, and survival. Many came from distant villages, drawn by the promise of income in a city that had nothing else to offer. Over time, they have built their own economy within the waste, with small shops, food stalls, and even mosques standing beside the piles of refuse. In a place where hope seems impossible, they have created a fragile version of life, a reminder that human resilience can thrive even in the most inhospitable corners of the modern world. The hidden cost of imported waste. Behind Indonesia's waste crisis lies a darker truth. Much of the garbage isn't even its own. Since global trade restrictions on plastic shifted after China's import ban in 2018, foreign waste has poured into Indonesia under the label of recyclable materials. Shipping containers arriving from the United States, Australia, and parts of Europe were supposed to hold clean, sorted plastics, but inside were piles of contaminated trash, diapers, food wrappers, even medical waste. In small port towns across East Java, factories began processing this imported garbage, burning and melting it into fuel or cheap materials. The result was disastrous. Thick black smoke filled the air, coating nearby villages in soot. Farmers reported dead crops, and children developed chronic coughs. Tests by environmental groups found toxic chemicals and heavy metals in the soil and groundwater. Locals, unaware of the danger, began using shredded plastic mixed with wood as firewood to cook meals or dry fish, unknowingly inhaling dioxins and carcinogens every day. While Indonesia's government has announced tighter regulations and returned some shipments to their countries of origin, much of the waste remains buried or burned in secret. Critics argue that developed nations have simply outsourced their pollution, exporting environmental harm under the guise of recycling. For Indonesia, the cost is not just ecological, it's human. Every breath taken near these burning piles carries traces of someone else's trash. And in a global system that values profit over responsibility, the poorest communities end up paying the highest price for the convenience of the richest. The plastic tide and the dying seas. From the mountains of waste inland, the garbage eventually finds its way to the sea. Indonesia's rivers, once vital lifelines for trade and agriculture, have turned into flowing conveyors of plastic. The Citarum River in West Java, once known for its fertile banks, is now infamous as one of the most polluted waterways on Earth. Bottles, bags, and styrofoam choke its surface so densely that sunlight can barely touch the water below. Fishermen cast their nets not for fish, but to collect floating debris they can sell for recycling. Downstream, the river empties into the Java Sea, carrying millions of tons of trash every year. Scientists estimate that Indonesia alone contributes over 3 million tons of plastic waste to the ocean annually, ranking it the world's second-largest marine polluter. In coastal villages, the tide brings back what humanity throws away: flip-flops, straws, toys, and fragments of plastic from across the globe. Marine life pays the price. Turtles wash ashore with stomachs full of plastic bags. Dead whales have been found with dozens of kilograms of garbage inside them. Coral reefs, once bursting with color, are now buried under layers of debris and microplastics. The damage extends beyond the ecosystem. It reaches dinner tables. Studies have found microplastic particles in seafood sold in local markets, and even in the salt used in everyday cooking. The ocean, long seen as infinite and forgiving, is now mirroring humanity's wastefulness back at us. For Indonesia, a nation of islands bound by water, this plastic tide is not just environmental, it's existential, a slow erosion of both nature and identity. Toxic air and the human cost. In the neighborhoods surrounding Indonesia's landfills, the air itself has become a silent killer. Thick smoke drifts across the landscape day and night, rising from the constant burning of garbage. Methane gas, generated by decomposing waste, mixes with smog from nearby factories, creating a toxic haze that blankets communities for miles. The smell of melting plastic and rot seeps into homes, clinging to skin and clothes. Doctors in Bekasi and East Java report a surge in respiratory illnesses, chronic coughs, asthma, and lung infections, especially among children and the elderly. Skin diseases, eye irritation, and headaches are part of everyday life. For pregnant women, the risk is even higher. Exposure to dioxins and heavy metals can cause birth defects and developmental problems. In some areas, groundwater near dump sites test positive for lead and mercury, making the water unsafe for drinking or bathing. Yet, most residents have no choice but to use it. The poorest families live closest to the landfills because rent is cheap and work is nearby. Their homes are built from waste, their air poisoned by it, their future shaped by it. Government health programs are scarce, and when they exist, they barely reach these communities. Environmental groups have urged stronger air quality monitoring, but enforcement remains weak. Indonesia's rapid industrialization has come at an invisible cost, one measured not in currency, but in lungs, blood, and lost years of life. Beneath every mountain of garbage lies an unspoken truth. Pollution is not just an environmental issue, it is a human one, written in every breath taken near the smoke. Government promises and broken systems. For decades, Indonesia's leaders have promised to clean up the country's waste problem, but progress has been slow, inconsistent, and often symbolic. In 2019, the government announced an ambitious pledge to reduce marine plastic waste by 70% before 2025. Campaigns were launched to promote recycling, ban single-use plastics, and introduce modern waste-to-energy facilities. But on the ground, the reality tells a different story. Many municipalities still lack proper waste collection systems, and in rural areas, burning trash in open pits remains the norm. Corruption and mismanagement often derail well-intentioned projects. Funds allocated for cleanup vanish before they reach communities. The Smart City and Clean Indonesia initiatives have produced glossy reports and photo opportunities, but little structural change. In Jakarta, plans for incineration plants have stalled due to environmental concerns and protests from residents who fear even more toxic air. Local governments struggle to enforce regulations because waste management falls between multiple ministries with overlapping authority. The environment, industry, and local affairs all share partial responsibility, leading to confusion and inefficiency. Private companies, meanwhile, continue to package goods in single-use plastics with minimal accountability. While awareness is growing, and schools now teach students about recycling, the scale of the crisis far outpaces reform. Experts warn that without radical action, Indonesia's waste output could double within the next decade. The failure isn't just bureaucratic, it's systemic, a reflection of a country caught between modernization and mismanagement, where promises are plentiful but infrastructure is broken, and where every delay allows another mountain of garbage to rise. The fight against waste, a fragile hope. Amid the chaos and despair, a quiet movement is taking root across Indonesia. Proof that even in the dirtiest places, hope can still grow. From Jakarta to Bali, local communities, students, and small businesses are beginning to fight back against the tide of waste. Grassroots projects known as Bank Sampah, or waste banks, have appeared in hundreds of neighborhoods where residents can exchange sorted recyclables for cash, groceries, or school supplies. In Bali, young activists have led successful campaigns to ban plastic bags and straws, inspiring similar regulations in other provinces. Startups like Waste for Change and Gringo are using mobile apps and AI to track, collect, and recycle waste more efficiently. Some innovators are turning plastic bottles into construction bricks, furniture, and even road materials. These small victories, while not enough to stop the crisis, show that change is possible when citizens take ownership of their environment. Yet challenges remain enormous. Recycling facilities are scarce, and public participation is still low in poor areas where daily survival takes priority over sustainability. Corruption and weak law enforcement continue to undermine progress. But for those who live beside landfills and polluted rivers, any step forward is significant. They know that no government decree will save them. Only persistence will. A single school that teaches children to separate trash, a village that stops burning plastic, a company that redesigns packaging. These are the sparks that could one day ignite a larger transformation. The fight against waste is fragile, but it has begun. And in a country buried under garbage, the smallest acts of change might one day move mountains. Mountains that mirror humanity. As the sun sets over Bantar Gebang, the mountain of garbage glows faintly under the orange sky. From a distance, it could almost be mistaken for a natural hill until the wind shifts and the smell of decay returns. This is more than a landfill, it is a monument to human excess, a reflection of how civilization's progress and its pollution have grown side by side. Every plastic bag, every discarded bottle tells a story of consumption without consequence. For Indonesia, These mountains are not just environmental scars, they are symbols of inequality, where the waste of the wealthy becomes the livelihood of the poor. Yet the story doesn't belong to Indonesia alone. Around the world, similar landscapes are rising. In India, in the Philippines, in Africa, even in the outskirts of Western cities that ship their trash abroad. Bantar Gebang simply stands as the most visible warning of what happens when convenience outweighs responsibility. Scientists say it could reach its capacity within a few years, but long before that it has already overflowed the boundaries of conscience. Still, amid the smoke and silence, life persists. Children laugh, scavengers work, the city keeps sending more. It is both tragedy and testament, humanity's ability to destroy and to endure, layered together in one mountain of waste. As the camera pulls back, Jakarta's skyline glitters beyond the haze, bright, distant, and indifferent. The image asks one final question. If this is the cost of modern life, how much longer can we afford to look away? From above, the garbage mountains of Indonesia resemble living creatures, expanding, breathing, consuming everything around them. Yet beneath the waste lies a truth too large to ignore. This is not just Indonesia's problem, it is humanity's mirror. Every package, every meal, every choice we make contributes to the landscape of our own neglect. Progress has blinded us with its lights, but the shadows it casts are growing higher each day. Still, even among the ruins, people continue to rebuild, to adapt, to survive. The mountains may stand as symbols of failure, but also of endurance, proof that life persists, even when the earth itself seems exhausted. Perhaps the real question is not how we clean this waste, but how we cleanse ourselves.